This past week, a community that had not been affected by Trump's policies or decisions rendered by Trump's Supreme Court justices became affected. The ruling in regards to the proposed student debt forgiveness now means that millions of student debtors, many of which were part of the Bernie or Bust and Demexit community, now find themselves in the same situation as women, especially women of color, the LGBTQ plus community, and other communities and communities of color. It's interesting, for up until now, these groups, these students and young people, had been pretty much unaffected. They are the type of people that would be able to get abortions if they needed it. They would not have to worry so much about being discriminated against because of their gender or sexual preference. And they would be able to get into the college they want, as by and large the Bernie or Bust and Demexit community is predominantly white. So if these people are now affected, they may want to look at joining with the other affected communities. But that may create some unique concerns. The first one is they will need to apologize. I am sure that there are many women, especially the women of color, that warned the Bernie supporters of the threat that Trump posed in 2016, that feel that their calls went unheeded. Bernie supporters would have to make apologies and make amends to these women, and especially women of color. Another thing is Bernie or Bust and Demexit folks will need to realize that the way they are affected is minor compared to the way other communities are affected. Student debt is definitely an issue, but it is a far cry from the loss of bodily autonomy that low-income women, especially women of color, face thanks to Dobbs. The fact that they can now be, the fact that they do not have to worry about being discriminated against based on religion, or at least not to the extent that members of the LGBTQ plus community are affected. And finally, though they may be saddled with student debt, at least unlike students of color, they will still be able to get into the college of their choice. Yet another thing is, as many Bernie or Bust and Demexit folks are young, they may want to defer to the voice of more experienced organizers, especially organizers from communities of color or women of color. As somebody that has the experience of very often being the oldest person in an organizing space, I understand that, yes, young people can bring a certain spirit, but they also may lack perspective and the experience of having been involved in a movement for decades. The final thing, and perhaps the hardest for these Bernie or Bust and Demexit folks to accept, is that they may need to put down their phones. Reforming the courts, etc., will require and may require direct, boots on the ground action that goes well beyond the social media slacktivism that many Bernie supporters seem to engage in. One other thing is, if they do not feel comfortable being the boots on the ground, they could at least find ways to use their power and privilege to support those boots on the ground.